Irreverent, entertaining, cool. You're listening to LA Talk Radio.
You're listening to Peace Fund with Ethan Dettenmaier and Adrian Paul, right here on LA Talk Radio.
Tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. Time's ticking, isn't it? Morning, Ethan.
Good morning. How are you?
Oh, I'm fabulous this morning. I'm just retweeting your tweet that you put out for the event at Christmas time for the homeless kids, which I think is an awesome event. All of you should listen up on that. What happened? You told me something that happened this morning about that.
I actually filled you in. Well, first of all, thank you. You've supported the event for a number of years, actually. You've been to it. We do bring Christmas to about 300 to 400 homeless kids that we bus in Polar Express style to a sort of a North Pole set that's co-hosted by us, many of the celebrity regulars we work with, and many of the cosplayers in the area. And it is pretty epic. It's brunch, with the waiter and waitress, something many of these kids have never experienced. And they all get presents. And since we shop for the presents, we all know they're epic. But what we had discussed this morning is you and I have done a lot of work with the social service office that also runs and operates the shelter for domestic violence. We've done a lot of work with them. Their office burned down the week before last. So this is all the much more important. I actually met with them last week, a couple of days after the fire, just to figure out what we can do. And they have some things in place, many things they need. The Christmas they are desperately hoping we can maintain, which is becoming more and more of a challenge as it gets bigger. So you can go on behalf of Adrian, Paul, and myself to the GoFundMe crowdfunding campaign at gofundme.com/acombatradio-Christmas and get involved for what is actually, honestly, probably the most epic crowdfunding campaign in terms of giveaways I've ever seen. It's not moving very fast, and I think that's because people have a certain preconception of who these kids are. But most of these families and their parents, most of them have worked or had a job even up till recently, the economy being what it is. This isn't part of a sort of an enabling welfare office that I think people sort of project mentally when you talk about it. These are pretty normal kids. Most of them try to go to school and stay in school, and it's really just about giving them just a little extra assistance. So if someone's willing enough to get involved, we are willing to make it worth your while. And if you check the campaign out, it's a, bonanza of greatness.
A bonanza. That was an old show, wasn't it? I don't remember it back that far, actually.
I know you don't. Well, neither do I. But thank heavens to syndication, because now we know what it is. But yeah, you can get all kinds of things. I mean, you get Disneyland tickets, Magic Castle tickets, Universal tickets. You get all kinds of celebrity, lunches, meet and greets. It's crazy, and you can get involved for very little. $10 buys over 3 meals on average. So if you put in
buys over 3 meals, isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Through
the food bank here in Los Angeles. So we know we've been at the.
We've been to those food bank. Yeah, we've been there.
So if you donate three meals, you can actually $10. You can picture it as 3 meals. That's really what you're doing. So there you have it.
So you all heard that. You heard that. That's our initial announcement this morning.
And I appreciate you giving me the floor on it.
Well, this is what the show's about. Giving the floor to people who need to be heard about the charities they support. Which brings me to our guest this morning. She's Irish Bolivian.
Which is a great combination, by the way. That's a great combination.
Irish Bolivian. I just started that. Anyway, she's raised in Miami. And moved to Los Angeles in 2000 without knowing anybody in the city, much like I did back in a few years ago. And stood in line with homeless people for open mics and enrolled in the local improv schools and acting classes. Jill-Michele Melean. How do you say your last name? Melean? Melean.
Yeah.
It is almost French as well.
It's actually French descent, correct. And then my father's from Bolivia, so it kind of just went from France to Spain to Bolivia, and here I am.
It's all that Latin thing going on, isn't there? So, but you've done so much stuff. You've done on Showtime stand-up special, Hot Tamales. You're obviously a stand-up comedian. You're a writer producer. You teamed up with Academy nominee Larry Hankin, starred and wrote produced a short comedic film called Emmett Demus and the Porno Queen.
Oh my God, it was so much fun.
It sounds like I just put the title of it. Oh my God, I heard it was highly respected in the film festival circuit.
It did really well. My father, when he heard the title, he was like, "What is happening? My daughter, I can't believe." And I'm like, "No, Dad, it's a joke. It's a joke." And still to this day, my dad doesn't understand. He's like, even as a stand-up comedian, he's like, "Are you by yourself?" Like, he doesn't get it.
Is that how he talks?
He does, and he's been in the country in Miami for, oh my gosh, over 40-something years, and still the thickest accent, and I can't understand a word. And my stepmother, of course, because Irish and Bolivian, my parents divorced, of course. They just had me, and that was it. And they gave me 2 first names because they fought over that as well. But yeah, he remarried a woman from South America, so they only speak Spanish, and that house is the thickest accent. Sometimes when they're speaking to me, I go, "Are they speaking English? Because I don't understand what's happening right now."
Yeah, it's like my mom. My mom actually emigrated or went from Italy to England. She still has an accent, but her accent is actually English-Italian. So her accent is kind of, "Hello, mate. All right, you all right then? It's so yeah, right, mate. It's I can tell you all about this, but it's okay. So I'm like,
wow.
Whoa,
Yeah, you're like, I don't know.
Which is in between. But you've done a lot of stuff. You've got a one-woman show, Rule Breaker, which is being turned into a screenplay. Mm-hmm. I've got a lot of stuff on you here.
Oh, I know. What you did. The internet is like, it's such a wonderful thing, but it's really scary at the same time.
Yeah,
I never want to Google myself because I'm always fearful, like, what's going to come up?
You got a web series you created called Zombie Underground.
Yeah, that was a few years ago. Currently, right now, I have a show in development with Mort Nathan. He wrote Kingpin, and he was the co-EP of Golden Girls, and it's about NASA, and it's really fun. It's a single camera hybrid with the tone of Veep. So it's a really cool project right now that we're working on, and if people are fans that are listening, I was a cast member on MADtv.
Yeah, I know. I've got that, and actually, one of your. You got to look at my notes here. She's like, "What's he going to say now?"
I'm not going to beat him to it.
One of your what were you known for was also your deadpan impressions of Drew Barrymore and Britney Spears.
Yeah.
Can we do those over radio? I don't know if we can do that. Can you do that?
Drew, it's so easy to do over radio because her voice is so distinct. I mean, I love being here with you guys and talking on the radio.
Oh, look, we do impressions. Oh, I do occasionally. I get bombed for them, though, by Ethan, but that's okay.
That's not true. That's not true.
This morning I was talking about my African because today I want to go to Africa. Yes. But anyway, I think I'm going to leave it around because last week I did Indian or Pakistani and people didn't. Anyway.
Oh, they got mad?
But we'll leave that alone, yeah.
That made the cut, actually. I don't know if I told you. I meant to tell you that actually made the cut of the Christmas album.
Oh, did it?
Putting together. Yeah.
We were doing bumps on the Christmas album last week for the homeless kids, and he said, "Okay, we do one that says, 'Hi, this is Ethan Dettenmaier, this is John Beery, and Adrian Paul,' and I go, 'Adrian Paul,' and thank you very much. I hope you have a great Christmas." So eventually, on the 3rd or 4th take after we hadn't done it right, I decided to do it in Indian, and it kind of.
And it made the cut.
All the outtakes actually are on it. There's like a battery of us trying to get it right, so it's actually a pretty clever bumper. It's got a little like 40s, 50s Christmas music laid in behind it, and just sounds very genuine, actually. Like we're just trying to do a Christmas message and can't get it right.
That's great, and very multi-ethnic.
Yes.
So at one point he does his best Hank Azaria. I'd like to replace him on the Simpsons bit, and it all worked out.
Do you play poker with Hank?
No, I haven't played with Hank. I actually went to acting class with Hank years and years ago.
Oh, okay.
As well as Brad Pitt was in my acting class at the time. There were a lot of big Gina Gershon. A lot of big people that were,
lips,
I mean, so a lot of people actually went through this acting teacher who's now passed on. But it's like, no, I've never played poker. But we have another poker tournament coming up as well. The Peace Fund has a poker tournament with Microsoft.
Oh wow!
And you played poker. That's where we met, wasn't it?
That's where we met.
That's where we met.
Yes.
Yeah, it's actually. We have it in October 8th and 9th. So,
oh my gosh, count me in.
Okay, I'll invite you to that one.
Absolutely.
Cool.
I love poker. That became like my new fix like about a year ago. Oh no, a year and a half now. And I have found that I'm good at it, and it's so much fun, and especially as a girl playing poker with the guys, because there's not that many of us, and so it's really fun. Like when you sit down, you're like, "Mwahaha."
Do you wear like sunglasses and stuff like some of those guys do, and to like hide your identity?
No,
and try to hide what you're thinking.
I do not, but yet every time the hand like flips over, I always like to go yes. Like to every single hand. That's
Yeah.
my poker face. To always be excited
That's your
for
tell?
each.
Like-
Yeah, oh yeah. Like, and they're like, oh come on, Jill. Like, what do you can't get excited about every hand, you know?
You know, actually, I came third in that tournament.
Did you really?
Yeah, I made the final table, and I was kind of like, really? I did this? Oh, this is kind of cool. I was actually chip leader when we started, and I kind of made a slight faux pas on the hand. I actually did that the other night in a house game where I actually was top leader. Everybody thought I was going to win it, and there was 3 of us left, and I had a pair of 2s, and I'm like, and somebody went in pretty high, and I'm like, for a pair of 2s, I'm not going to bet this right now. So I threw the hand in. The other guy went in, and then when it flopped, 2 2s came down on the flop,
yeah.
and they both went all in. And I was like, I would have cleaned up. I'm out, you know, that's poker.
That's poker for you. I went out on that tournament with a queen and ace, 2 pairs on the board. And the guy on the river got a straight.
Yeah.
And I was out, and I went all in because at that point, I mean, we were playing for like
2 pair, you have
5
to.
hours,
Yeah,
you know,
2
and I
pair,
was
yeah.
like, my butt hurts. So either go all in and keep staying for another few hours or, you know, just bust. And that's what happened. I was like, darn it.
So let's talk about your charity work,
Yes.
because I know you've done a lot of it. You've done, you know, you're on the committee for the National Tourette Syndrome Association.
Yes.
You appeared in February at Hollywood Heels, Spotlight on Tourette Syndrome event. Why Tourette Syndrome?
This is a great story for you guys. I was actually engaged to a Calvin Klein underwear model, and he had Tourette syndrome. And when I met him, I was in New York at a bar, and I thought one of his tics, he was blinking his eye and like clicking, and I completely thought he was winking at me, and it gave me the confidence to walk over. So
Say hi.
I was like,
I'm Jill.
hello, hey, how you doing? So that's exactly what I did. I walked over to him and said hi. We ended up in a relationship, and, you know, cut to we're engaged. And, you know, I really did a lot of research about Tourette syndrome because, you know, if I'm going to be married to somebody, I want to know everything about it.
Right.
So I went and talked to specialists. I talked to everybody, became really involved in TSA. And, you know, and it's such a sad disorder because it's not diagnosed as a disease. It's just a disorder, and it's a neurological disorder. And there's so many things that... so many test drugs that they give out, but nothing is a cure for it. So with education of nutrition, that I went ahead and talked to a bunch of nutritionists also, is that if you keep the blood clean, like no alcohol, eat, you know, very clean foods, it actually helps with the misfires in the brain. So I became really, really fascinated with it. And my fiance at the time that had Tourette syndrome didn't like that I was getting so much knowledge about it, because he wanted to keep drinking and keep having a good time. And I'm like, you can't do this. And, you know, and every month with this disorder, because it comes along OCD, you know, ADHD, bipolar, it's all in there. It's Tourette syndrome has like.
So how did you do that in a relationship? I mean, was that hard?
It was very difficult because he hid it from me at the beginning. He learned to re-trigger his tics into like his toes or snapping or doing things like that. And the more comfortable that he got with me, the more I would see him completely lose control, and he'd have to just let it out. And he described it to me as though, like, when you're going to sneeze and, you know, you hold it back, that's how he is all day. So he's exhausted by the end of the day. So when we were together, he was like, I am comfortable now, and he would just tick like crazy. And it was so sad to see the suffering, and to have these 5 basic tics each month. There's a new tic, you don't know what's going to happen, and sometimes it would be one that he would thrust his head back and hit a wall.
So it would change? It would actually change?
Yeah.
Wow.
So it just constant, these changes that happen. And most of the people that are diagnosed with Tourette syndrome are incredibly intelligent and incredibly gifted in the creative world. Like, they can play piano really well, or they can play sports or do things like that. And when they're playing those things, for some reason, the tics are lessened. So there is a study that is happening with the neurological of why it is that when they're so focused on one type of activity, they're okay. But yet when they're just trying to deal in the real world and day to day and talking to people, it's like out of control, and it's so much suffering.
It's interesting because we don't really know this is a lot of the time. This exists as an illness or and even I'm looking here. Actually, I was watching the U.S. Went into the World Cup this year, and we had everybody watched. Tim Howard set a World Cup record of 16 saves, and most people don't actually understand that he's actually they've just watched someone with Tourette syndrome. He actually has. He continues to prove that Tourette syndrome is not a stop sign when it comes to following the dream that he wants, but it is evident in his life. Mm-hmm. So somebody even like that's on a world stage actually has this issue, and I think having to deal with it and find out what this neurological disorder is all about is very important, because it does affect, and it does. I mean, I know that we have a cold or something, we're miserable for a few days, right. But to have that every day of your life,
every day. Yeah, and what happened was it's just now being diagnosed. For so many years. Even my ex-fiance was put on like the short bus when he was a little kid, because they thought that something was like wrong with him. He had some kind of he was a slow learner, so he's considered to go into the slow learning class, the Down syndrome, with the Down syndrome kids and stuff. And you're like, no, he's completely fine. He's just, he has a neurological disorder, so he just needs to be able to focus more, and stress causes way more tics. So, and they even say back in, before it was diagnosed, they would put people in the crazy homes that had this. And they said Amadeus Mozart had it. There's all these different things. Yes, go ahead.
In his defense, he really was crazy.
Well, absolutely.
In his defense? Yeah. I'm not exactly sure that's a defense.
Any barrister at the time would have said,
It's so true. Yeah, I mean, to make that kind of music, too.
Exactly, that's how he felt all day long.
Exactly.
The guy that actually started was a neurologist, a French neurologist in 1885, when he first described the condition in an 86-year-old French noblewoman. His name was I can do this in French. Dr. Georges Gilles de la Tourette.
Oh, nice.
Hello, my name is Georges. But it's actually, we have a bunch of facts here which we like to sort of put on the show. Tourette syndrome is more common than doctors once thought. 3 of every 1,000 children, 6 through 17 years of age, have been diagnosed with Tourette's. Tourette syndrome is 3 times more common among boys than among girls, which I didn't realise that. It almost starts off before age 18, usually between the ages of 5 and 7. Tourette syndrome affects all racial and ethnic groups. However, Hispanic children and non-Hispanic black children are less likely to be diagnosed than non-Hispanic white children.
Wow.
That was an interesting fact. Although tic symptoms can decrease as a child reaches adulthood, related conditions like obsessive-compulsive, which you were talking about right now, disorder, and attention deficit disorder, which you talked about as well, may continue to have a substantial impact on someone's life. Tough to actually deal with. I didn't know some of those figures there. That's kind of.
Yeah, we had the discussion, not to have kids, because when it is a male with Tourette's, it's pretty high percentage that your child will have Tourette's. And I know people in the organization that, their husband has Tourette's and they decided to have a child, and their child does have Tourette's. Mm-hmm. And they're excelled because they had the knowledge about how to care for their child. So it's a different story as not having a parent with Tourette's and then getting a child that has Tourette's and not knowing what it is. So they were able to really hone in and care for him, and he is completely doing amazing. This kid is like a national spokesperson for Tourette syndrome, and he's only like 16 years old, and he started in I Have Tourette's But Tourette's Doesn't Have Me when he was a little boy. He was in the documentary, the HBO documentary. So it's like, if you have the knowledge about this disorder, then you can actually care for the child, and they do excel. But if you don't know, it is a very scary thing to see your child suffer that way, and to have all of these other symptoms within this. It's like the big package deal with Tourette's, because you get all of these other disorders within.
Do they know why it encompasses all these types of disorders?
They say it's genetic. However, my ex-fiance, he didn't have anybody in his family that he knew that had Tourette's. However, again, 30 years ago, or, these studies were coming out, but they still weren't diagnosing the people. So they would call them crazy, or call them, they're slow learners and they need to not be with the regular kids. And so it's a very new to society, Tourette syndrome. It still is. And it's like the more that we spread awareness and educate people, then the more that they can own into their children and really care for them in the way that's needed for them to excel.
It's hard because in society we expect a normalcy of some sort. And my business partner, actually, his son, when he came out, was constricted of blood to the brain, so he's had issues ever since. And the other parents that have their children don't want them to play with him because they think he's got some sort of disease. And you sit there going, really? I mean, and that was funny because the first time they brought, his name's Danny, brought Danny over to visit with my daughter and my son. She was a little apprehensive because she'd been around, this was in Hungary, she'd been around other parents that were like, oh, no, you don't want to play with him. No, you can't. And so they were a little bit, but we don't. We're like, are you kidding me? Of course you play with him. No problem. And from my point of view, and from I think a lot of other people's point of view, if you don't choke on this, Jill. That was the coffee. See, that's what happens when you have coffee in the morning.
I know. So sorry. And you're telling such a beautiful story, and I'm over here.
No, but the point is that, kids that actually are around kids that have disabilities are much more accepting as they get older to have these kids in their lives. Absolutely. When you don't have it and you shun it, later on you're scared. You're like, oh, I don't know what that is. Mm-hmm. And that's a problem because then that creates a whole segregated society.
Yes.
And that's what you're talking about before, about him not knowing and being, oh, well, you don't know what this is. He's mental, or he's put in a mental institution. Or so I think that is an issue.
Yeah, and it's still, not to disregard, his parenting, but his mom, since she wasn't educated with what was going on, she catered so much to babying him and setting fears into him that shouldn't be. Like, she would say to him, you can't live alone. You can never live alone because you'll go into a seizure and then you'll die and no one will be there to save you.
So she puts the fear in him.
Yes.
Right.
So they live in a fear-based world. And I think that's ultimately why we broke up, is because there was this fear around him that I couldn't break as an adult. I'm not the mom. I can't do those kind of things. So instead, I detached with love, that kind of thing, and then was able to be very active in the organization. Right. Because I do believe in the organization and what it's trying to do to educate parents and to educate society, so they know that, hey, this kid's normal. You're not going to get it if you hang out with them. They're not weird. They're actually super intelligent. I haven't met any of the children that have Tourette syndrome that are not intelligent. It takes a little bit more time with them because they're so distracted with, imagine, like we were saying, with, feeling like you have to sneeze all day long and holding it in and then like the world and seeing things and being judged, so you have to take a little bit more time with them. However, they are super, super intelligent children.
Well, you talked about the association and National Tourette Syndrome Association, founded in 1972 in Bayside, New York. What do they do? I mean, obviously you said that they let people know about this situation, but do they deal with treatments? Do they deal with how do they work?
They're always constantly changing and growing. So right now, it's more on my part and my committee position is to spread awareness. They are trying to develop more studies and raise more funds for studies for different types of drugs that can help subside Tourette's, because there is no cure. So they're looking at the drugs that already exist right now, and they're trying to find what actually operates and works well for this neurological disorder to help subside, to give these children a little bit more ease, and adults, because adults suffer with it as well. And most of the time they said, yeah, it goes away in your adulthood, but sometimes it gets worse. And especially when they get older as an elder, it will increase. So every study is, every individual is different. So that's what their studies are for. So all of their awareness and their funding goes to these different types of studies to help find I don't know if we can ever find a cure. Is there a cure for anything? I don't know if there's ever really a cure.
I believe that there are cures, but I also think we've discussed this in many other issues that we deal with every week. Catch it early, you will be able to handle it or cure it in some cases.
Well, I think
earlier.
Education too.
Education is another big thing. Yeah.
Once you know what's going on, I mean, even people that have, as simple as, and it's not simple, but if you're, comparing it to Tourette's, but an anxiety disorder, if they know what's going on, they can stop, they can breathe, they can, but if someone doesn't know what's going on, has an anxiety attack, they're, going to have a heart attack. They're going to go crazy. So I think, yes, education, I think, is a huge part in when you get diagnosed, you're able to educate yourself and to create coping skills.
Well, isn't it? It's also that the parents need to, because, most of the, as we said before, it's 5-year-olds to 7-year-olds is really when you get diagnosed with having Tourette's. It's parents' duty to actually say, okay, we've got this, we've got to do something about it now so that we can actually have the child cope with that issue throughout their life. And so I think it's, you as a parent, I don't think you can, ignore that there might be some issue that you need to have checked out or something. So, I mean, sometimes I think it's very important, because I'm reading here, it says, the Comprehensive Behavioral Intervention for Tics, which is CBIT, teaches kids to recognize that they're about to have a tic and use it as competing behavior, which you were talking about with your ex-fiance, with the tics with the fingers and everything else. Individuals with Tourette syndrome typically experience a premonitory urge, a physical sensation that occurs immediately before the tic, like an itch or a pressure to tickle. And so, when they have this, basically what they do is helping kids spot and cope successfully with the stressors that worsen their tics. They've got to cope with those stressor facts that make those tics work. But you can't do that when you're 23 years old. You've got to do that when you're 5 or 6. So you can learn to do that so that you can train your body like you do martial arts. You've done martial arts for a long time. You train your body to react a certain way.
Absolutely. And, what is it, the new study? I think it is that to make something a habit, they used to say it was 3 weeks. Now the new study says it's 66 days. But I think that's what it is. It's like going to the gym and taking on a new workout. And it's like at first it's really difficult, but then once you get into it and your body gets used to it, then you're able to take on to the next step. And I think that's what it's really important about spreading awareness to these young children, is because there's always going to be a new tic that occurs. But as long as they are conditioning themselves and having their coping skills, they're working out every day with their own, neurological workout, then when those other tics hit, they know what to do, because it is a surprise. I mean, every month was scary. He had one where he screamed in the middle. We would be walking just like, wah! And I would get scared. Everyone around him would get scared. But it's like, if he didn't have any coping skill, he would have freaked out people. He was just he was so good about re-triggering, and he would scream, and then he would start talking really loud and, make it funny. And then everyone would be like, okay, but in my heart, I was having a mini heart attack. But
well, you talked about awareness and acceptance in the educational arena. Fitting in, it's tough to fit in. I want to actually trigger some difficulties in kids, which go from auditory and visual difficulties in processing information. Frequently, students with TS have difficulty processing information presented to them either verbally or visually. They might require more time to answer a question or respond to a directive. Some have learned to fill in the awkward silence by saying something, which you just said. There's that screaming, I'll fill it in with, there's something else to go on with it. So there is something, but, what they can say can be negative, such as, this is dumb, I don't care about your stupid question, shut up, I don't have to do this. Any of those can be fillers that kids fill in when they have to confront this. There is sensory integration issues, hypersensitive to light. Was he ever hypersensitive to light?
Yes, absolutely.
Wow. Sound, touch, taste, smell. You get overstimulated by doing that. It's kind of, when I think about that, I'm thinking, well, absolutely everything you're working around with all day long is affecting you one way or another. Yes. So when you said earlier on that, he was exhausted by the end of the day. You can actually imagine why. To actually have to deal with that all day long, he'd be so exhausted. There are attentional difficulties, reading difficulties, difficulties with handwriting. I mean, God, it just goes on and on and on. But as I mentioned before, there's the National Tourette Syndrome Association. We'll have that on our website later on. I'll bring on John Beerley in a second because I'm sure he's going to be able to put it on there. There's also NJCTS, which is New Jersey Center for Tourette Syndrome, which again is a New York-based organization. Is John on the line with us?
He's here.
John, are you there?
Yes, good morning, Adrian and Ethan, and good morning, Jill. Welcome to Peace Fund Radio.
Hi, thank you.
John is our master of knowledge. He also presents our kid, isn't it? Master of knowledge. He actually knows everything about all the guests that we come in, much more than we do.
Certificate now, I'm sure.
And he brings us out. We have every week a kid hero of the week that we highlight, a child that has done amazing things sometimes for the topic we're discussing, or has done something for another organisation that is extraordinary. So we want to highlight them so that we can further what they do and tell people about what they're doing. So, John, let me pass the floor to you.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you, Jill, for years of a lot of really great laughter. You're just absolutely fantastic. Between MADtv, your stuff on Reno 911, you are hilarious. And I think that comedy is especially difficult to bring across. You know, something is either funny or it's not, and you're just you're always on it. You were particularly funny, I think, with your chemistry with George Lopez as his mistress on Reno 911 was hilarious. So thank you very much for that.
I know I'm not being very funny this morning, though.
It's okay, we're dealing with. We'll get there.
Okay.
We'll get there. We tend to do it at the end of the show.
No, that's what I love about the show. It's it's we're able to bring attention and awareness and understanding to important issues such as this, which is also why we are always so excited to talk about our heroes of the week. Now, before I get to this week's hero, I want to give a very quick update on the second swim of our very first hero of the week from many years ago, Annalise Carr. Now, Annalise swam 33 miles across Lake Ontario and raised $250,000 for Camp Trillium, which benefits children with pediatric cancer and their families. Earlier this year, just a few weeks ago, she attempted her second swim, which was 50 miles across Lake Erie, to set another world record and raise even more money for Camp Trillium. She got about halfway through it and had to divert because of weather conditions. She had 4-foot waves slamming into her. So she had to cut her swim a little bit short. So this Sunday, August 31st, she will be swimming the final 18 miles that she was not able to finish at the end of July. She has already raised $188,000 more dollars just from this swim alone, which is $20,000 more than it was last week. And the number just keeps going and going. So, Annalise, if you're out there listening, we wish you all the best as you finish your swim up this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good stuff. Unbelievable.
And I'm sure she will.
Oh, go ahead, Adrian. Sorry.
I'm sure she will.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, weather permitting, she will get there. Absolutely. And that brings us to our current Heroes of the Week for this week. We're going to go back in time to 2011. 11-year-old Katrine Kirsebaum from Walnut Creek, California, goes skiing and loses her wallet. So when Katrine heads to the front desk of the ski lodge and asks if any wallets have been turned in, she is shocked when the staff member brings out a massive box of wallets. And Katrine thinks aloud, wow, I can't believe this many people lose their wallets while skiing. And the lodge staff says, well, this is just a box of wallets. You should see what else we've got back there. And that's when Katrine discovers the true contents of the ski lodge's lost and found. Stacks upon stacks upon stacks upon stacks of coats and boots and gloves and hats. It's like the top secret storehouse at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark. So Katrine mentions this to her best friend and fellow avid skier, Corinne Hines, who is also 11 years old. Now, while many people would look at this lost and found situation and say, who leaves all this stuff? Corinne and Katrine looked at it and said, who needs all of this stuff? And so they began to collect as many discarded cold weather items from the ski lodge as they could, from coats and boots to gloves and sweaters. They created their own nonprofit organization called K&C Care, and began to distribute this warm weather gear to the local homeless population. Now, since 2011, Katrine and Corinne have worked with numerous ski lodges to deliver 5,000 warm weather clothing items to 2,500 homeless people. And more recently, they have partnered with the Jefferson Awards, which was founded by Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. And they are using that partnership to go national. Within the next 5 years, their goal is to be working with 60 ski resorts in 10 states, with the ultimate goal of distributing warm clothing to 50,000 more homeless people through this new partnership. You can find out everything you need to know about their organization from their website, which is warmwinters.org. That's warm-winters.org. You can also find them on Facebook and Twitter at warmwinters.org. And I really love this story because I think it sums up what's so special about our Hero of the Week segment. You've got two young people who had a unique idea. They followed through. They inspired others to join their movement as partners and volunteers, and they put their plans into action to save lives and bring awareness to a serious issue. And for that, it is my honor to name Katrine Kirsebaum and Corinne Hines as our Peace Fund Radio Heroes of the Week.
Yeah. That's
See,
amazing.
we talk about this every week, actually. We talk about how it starts with a small idea. I mean, this is 2011. This is only 3 years we're talking, right?
Right.
In another
right.
10 years, where is this organization going to end up?
Exactly. Yeah.
And this is what happens. It gradually builds and builds as things go. And I think, this is what's really good about, first of all, I bless their parents in a sense because they gave them the ability to recognize something and support them in doing something such as this. They were, how old were they then? They were
11 when they started.
11 when they started. So I mean, obviously their parents had some say into
Absolutely.
pushing them forward, and I think that's. We find every week that you start small and gradually you build, and finally another 10 years later you have a massive organization that you didn't even dream that you were going to have because you had a feeling that you had to help.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. So thank you for bringing that, John, because I think, Corinne and Katrine, it's funny, Corinne and Katrine.
Yeah.
Corinne and Katrine. Hello, Corinne.
Those are amazing stories.
Yeah, but I mean, you should watch some of the others we've had as well.
my gosh.
John always brings us interesting people that have done things, and we are creating actually a network, or it's going to be called Peace Fund Hub, where we're inviting different charities to cross-pollinate ideas how they can help each other. And we're just about to launch that. We've had some technical issues getting through to the actual getting the non-profit status agreed by the Yammer network, which is a Microsoft software. But we're just about to do that and start inviting all the non-profits that we've actually had who have been vetted, because we want to make sure that if we are, it's going to be Facebook for charities, pretty much. A place where charities can say, okay, let's say they're dealing with water. One deals with it in Africa, one deals with it bottling water in Southern California. Somebody else, they may have different ideas that they can actually help each other with, which will further their mission statement of helping, because the Peace Fund basically has done and has partnered with many organizations around the world, and we found that by doing that we can further what we do and help other organizations do that. And we're still doing a job, which is initiatives with organizations to improve the lives of kids everywhere.
Right.
So that's where that's coming from. But let's get back a little bit to the Tourette's. John, have you ever known anybody with Tourette's?
I do, actually. I do know a guy who has Tourette's, and he doesn't really have any physical tics, but verbally in conversational settings, there's no filter. It's just kind of like whatever he thinks, it just comes right out. Which for people who know him, that's fine. But sometimes if he's met someone new, or there's someone new in the conversation circle that doesn't kind of know what to expect, they might think, wow, that guy's really rude or something.
Hey,
when
that's
in
Ethan.
fact, I mean, that's just how he is. Nice. No filter, just no filter.
I have a mild filter. I just choose not to use it.
There you
in the
go.
presence of certain individuals.
See, you just don't make excuses. You're like, this is just me.
But now I've got one or two ideas.
You just got Dettenmaier.
Nice.
Yes,
Nice.
well, no, they say some have attentional difficulties. I don't know.
I know, but I always said that. I go, if I did have a child, I know I for sure 100% because I'm a comic. I would have a kid with verbal Tourette's. I know it, and I would be walking around. My kid would be cursing away, ticking away, and I'd just be like, "Mama's little rapper, come on."
It makes you think of Bill Murray's fake Tourette's explosion in What About Bob?
Yeah.
Which I can't repeat on the radio, on a radio show for children, but it's very funny. And I think, a lot of people think of Tourette's as just, something like that when in fact, I mean, it's a much deeper situation. And I'm very glad that we were able to bring some more attention to the finer points of it this morning.
Well, the interesting thing is, as we probably know, Robin Williams just recently passed away, and most comics come from having dark secrets or issues that they turn into humor. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why we laugh, because they do touch us in a very strange way, and we find it funny because we're not touched by it physically, but we kind of get what the humor's about, whatever it is. I mean, there's so many different, there's racial humor, there's so many different types of humor, and we find it funny. Yeah. Where do you get your humor from?
I draw it from my life. I did that very early on. I realized if I made people laugh, they would leave me alone. So I've developed that tool.
Didn't you think they'd actually want to hear more about you and talk more about you? Got to make somebody laugh.
My grandmother was really strict and really mean, and so I used to dry hump her leg. And
that image is just not. Dry hump her leg.
Yes, I would just like a dog, and then she'd be like, "Get off me, you weird kid!"
I thought that was only males.
No, girls do it too.
Oh my god!
And maybe that's why I'm in a guy's world. Then that's like I want.
Okay, hold on a minute. Hold on. How old were you at this point?
I was probably like
15.
5 or 6. It started when I was really young, but it did continue, and it still has. I dry hump people. I spread peace. I dry hump people everywhere. If they're having a rough day, just go behind them and stick your hand on their mouth and just start humping them and go, "Shh, you don't know me. It's okay." Spread peace.
Well, I'm spreading a little bit. If I tried that, I'd be arrested. Seriously, I mean, oh dear.
So that's how it. But my comedy is derived from darker places, and that could be darker places of being in a situation like with the family and the chaos of Christmas, and then the jokes will derive from that, and then or horrible dates, and a joke will come from that. Just even like there's about 10 minutes of my ex-fiance when I do an hour, because I want people to know about.
I was going to ask you that. Would you actually utilize some of that?
I do, and I educate through humor. I call it shock and educate. And people laugh, and then they come up afterwards. And a lot of people that come up to me after shows, their children are, diagnosed with ADHD and stuff, because I've been diagnosed with ADHD, but I'm off medication. So I choose not to take medication and find other ways, like working out and having an animal to care for. Mm-hmm. There's different things like that you can help develop coping skills. So I'm able to talk to families about it afterwards, which I think is a beautiful thing. And I think that's the beauty of stand-up, is that even though we're laughing, we're healing at the same time. And this is a place where we can open up a forum to discuss afterwards, because now everything is social media, where the comics used to, after their stage set, would be put in the green room, and they wouldn't talk to people most of the time. And now it's social media, so you go out with the audience and you talk and you take pictures, and this is where the stuff is coming up now. And I'm like, this is amazing to be able to talk to people after I do a full hour and headline, and they've actually taken pieces from my stand-up and are taking it home with them, and it's spreading awareness in such a strange way that I never thought I would be able to do that. I thought it was just making people laugh and healing them through laughter, but this is actually, I do talk about certain things that are very specific, like Tourette syndrome, like spreading peace and dry humping people's legs, or being men with chivalry. Chivalry's not dead. Come on, guys, and I do this whole thing about still opening the car door for women and things like that. And I get so many Facebook messages like, my husband opened the car door for me tonight. And, it's like these simple things. So it's, that's where I grab my comedy, is from moments that I'm like, oh my God, this is so awful. I can turn this into a joke.
Yeah. Well, No, but it's interesting because I think smiling or laughter really does heal.
Yes,
it heals. I mean, in everyday life,
absolutely.
I actually have a piece of merchandise that I started. I haven't even touched it for a while, but I'm probably going to relaunch our merchandise soon. But it says a smile is a curve that sets everything straight.
Yeah,
and I think it really does, because you kind of you kind of feel okay after you've been laughing. If you're not laughing during the day, it kind of. So I can really get what you're saying here about that.
It's that whole, even going to, if you want to go metaphysical, and that law of attraction. If you smile, you're going to, gravitate to people that are smiling. It's a ripple effect. Your energy, when you smile, it does something to your chemistry in your body, where you do start to look at perspectives different. Like you see things, look at the mountains, and when you smile. But if you're like, you can't see the mountains, or you can't see the trees, or you can't see what's right in front of you. Mm-hmm. So it does something to you. And I always say, instead of, getting like if you're getting in the checkout line and, the checkout person's taking too long or whatever, and if you just smile, it does something, and it changes the mood.
Changes the air.
Everything,
yeah.
Yes.
Although some people it doesn't. I've smiled at people and they don't do anything. I'm like, okay, let me try that one again.
I know.
Still doesn't work.
Or I hold the door and they just walk through, and I go, "You're welcome."
I also think it should be, guys, practice this for a little bit. Say good morning to somebody and see whether somebody actually says good morning back to you, mm-hmm. or hello. A lot of people don't say anything; they just kind of look and walk on. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, we've lost that. We've lost that.
Yeah.
Being big cities and stuff, sometimes actually being able to communicate with another human being that's actually in the same space as you.
Well, I think that's why people go, "Oh my gosh, New York has such an energy about it," and it's because you're in contact with so many people all the time that you have to, we're in machines in LA, we're in our cars most of the time. Yeah. Whereas in New York, you are walking with people, you're getting on subways, you're smashed. So it's almost like you've got to be in a flow with them, or else it causes chaos. So a lot of people are more in touch. Mm-hmm. And they're energetically connected in New York. That's why people go there and go, "Oh my God, the city, there's amazing, the vibe." And it's like, well, because people are more connected.
Connected, yeah, I get that. Now, we've got 4 minutes left probably. You do, Tourette's isn't the only organisation you work with. You work for Neglected Tropical Diseases. You're a mentor for underprivileged teen girls with Step Up Women's Network. And, of course, you always happy supporting animals with Stray Animal Rescue.
Yes.
So, I noticed that bit. Yeah. How do you find time to do this?
I think it's that same thing, where you take on a task and then it becomes part of your life, and you're able to take on another one. And I think that the older I get, the more I thrive, and I realize that we're here and it's about love. Where it's not so much like I want my career to be great, and I want great friendships and relationships, but it is about love. And when I'm giving to organizations with my time and with my efforts, is when I feel the most in tune with the vibration of the universe. So it makes me happy. So if that's what happiness is, a technical, term, or a definition, then that's my happiness.
It's interesting. Last night somebody asked me, because I'm doing a lot. We do a lot. I do a lot during the week, and right now I'm neck deep into our celebrity paintball competition, which is November, and literally neck deep in it. And we have a lot of great celebrities already coming on board, and we've got different organizations that are contacting us. But somebody said, "How do you spend time doing it? Is that something you really want to do rather than acting?" I said, "You know what? Acting and directing, everything else is great. It brings the money in, but it doesn't fulfill a hole in your soul, which really is your legacy that you leave people for the rest of your life, your children, your children's children on this planet." And to a degree, it touches me. It fulfills me more than my physical work, mm-hmm. because of that fact. Not that I would negate it, because I think you need to balance everything out, but I get where you're coming from, that you actually need to do these other things to actually feel something else that is a spiritual side to you.
Absolutely. I think as a child, we're so conditioned and we're trained to have a great career, a great job, and all this kind of stuff. And then And so that's our main focus. And then when you get older and you've actually achieved that and maintained it, then you need that other, and you realize that there's a bigger picture.
Right. Jill, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
It's great having you on here. See, this show disappears quickly. John, thanks for bringing us all the updates as per normal. You can obviously watch the Facebook, go to Facebook or to our website for the Peace Fund Games, www.thepeacefundgames.org, to the Peace Fund. John will have all the updates on the site. Thank you to the Speechley family for making this show possible. And thank you to all of you out there that are supporting us now and will support us. I know you're all going to come out to the paintball competition, and we'll bring you lots of interesting information. Our new website's going up shortly. I know I promised it last week, but we had a couple of technical issues. In closing, there's a quote today, comes from the 2005 TV movie, I Have Tourette's, but Tourette's doesn't have me. Amanda said, I hope that people accept me for who I am and that I don't have to be these other people. I can just be me. I want other people to think, oh, she's really cool. She's my friend. And she has Tourette's syndrome. Whatever. This is Adrian Paul and Ethan Dettenmaier. We'll see you again.
You're listening to Peace Fund with Ethan Dettenmaier and Adrian Paul, right here on LA Talk Radio.